Hi. A very good friend of mine told me that Seventh Heaven has a really crazy pilot episode and just some insane plot points. I had to check it out. I absolutely had to check it out. A lot of people I know grew up watching this show. This is the first I've heard of it, and it is honestly, wow, it's a lot. It's great. I guess you could say it's a Christian show, although it does kind of toe the line sometimes of what I would consider Christian media. This TV show follows a family of 7, which is why I think it's called Seventh Heaven. It's about a pastor, his wife, and their 5 children, and the crazy antics and shenanigans that this family gets into. And let me say, this is 1996 at its best. Also, recently I learned that the man who plays the lead Pastor Eric, this guy's named Stephen Collins, and apparently there was a recording where he has admitted to having a fondness for children. Classic pastor style, you know? So you have one man who's playing an upright family man on camera, super religious and spiritual, and then off camera is... I think it's a pretty good reflection of a lot of pastors in real life, so that's fun. Anyway, I did not just watch the pilot episode. I watched every episode in season 1 twice. There are 22 episodes in season 1, each about 40 minutes long. I did this for you, so I could find every little crazy plot point and cringy detail in this show, and I'm excited to bring to you Seventh Heaven. Let's go over the cast of characters. We've got Dad, Eric. We already talked about that guy. Eric is a reverend of a local church, and that's it. That's his entire personality and his superpower as well. He has magical religious man, pastor, reverend powers, and we will talk about that later. Mom. Her name's Annie. She's great. Honestly, such a well-rounded, mature individual, and I really like her as a character. Next, we have the oldest son in the family. He's 16. His name is Matt. He is the heartthrob of the show, and honestly, my favorite character. He stays strong through a lot of really heavy stuff, and I'm proud of him for that. So we love Matt in this house. The next kid in the family is Mary. She's 14 years old, and she's on the varsity basketball team as a freshman. So that's pretty impressive. She's strong-willed, she's gorgeous, she's got it all. We love Mary in this house. Then we have the 3 younger children, Lucy, Simon, and Ruthie. Lucy is 12, Simon is 10, and Ruthie is 5. And honestly, Ruthie, I think, is just there to be adorable. And she does a good job at it. So, episode 1, the infamous pilot episode. This is a crazy episode, and so I'm going to go into a lot more detail on this one than I am on the rest of the season, because it's just kind of nuts. Let's go. There are 4 main plot points that we follow in this episode. Simon wants a dog.
Dear God, thank you for this food. And if there really is a God, I know you'll find a way to get me that dog I've been wanting.
Matt has been secretly smoking cigarettes because he's been dating a girl who smokes cigarettes, which, by the way, we don't see her in this episode, and we never see her ever, but she did get him into smoking cigarettes.
Believe me, they're clueless. Besides, I got a foolproof method. Nothing to it.
Lucy, who is 12 years old, is just dying to start her period.
What you doing? Becoming a woman, so leave me alone. Does standing on your head help? Mary told me to do it, okay? Okay.
So again, dog, cigarettes, period. Oh, and also 4th plot point, Mary tries to seduce her brother, and it is very weird. You know what, let's just start with that one. Let's just get it out of the way. So Mary, who again is 14, during this episode is trying to convince her older brother Matt to teach her basketball, which she already knows because she's very good at basketball. She's on the varsity team. Then we learn the reason why she actually wanted Matt to help her with basketball.
If I could just kiss a guy, then I could quit thinking about it and concentrate on my game.
Mary, at the ripe old age of 14, has never been kissed. Her reasoning being that she's taller than all the other boys in her class, so nobody her age will kiss her. And she's just like, I just don't know where to put my hands.
I don't know where my hands go, or his hands, or my face, or his face or his lips.
Oh, I just want to be kissed so bad, and I've never been kissed ever, and I just don't know how to do it. If only my brother could teach me.
Who is he?
It doesn't matter.
Mary.
Couldn't you just show me, just so I could have some kind of experience?
Get out of here.
So she and Matt are like standing together, and then their dad walks around the corner, because of course he does.
Okay, so I close my eyes, and
Oh, Dad, this isn't what it looks like.
Oh, it's not what it looks like. Well, as this whole situation progresses, we learn that Mary has this rule that she's not allowed to date boys that are older than her, only boys her age. Matt talks to his dad about Mary, and they decide that since she's just so tall and just so mature,
maybe we should reconsider that policy we have about you're only going out with boys your own age.
What?
Maybe you could go out with a guy a year or two older.
and it's perfect timing because Matt has a best friend named Jeff who Mary has the hots for and has had the hots for years. We'll get to that in a minute because now we need to talk about the period plot line because it's insane. So let's talk about Lucy. Lucy is 12 and so that means her period's gonna start soon. Or maybe, I don't know, some people it doesn't start till you're 15, but Lucy is just dying to start her period. Throughout the episode, we see the reasoning behind her wanting to start her period is A, she doesn't want to become a barren old woman,
I'm gonna stay in this house for the rest of my life and become a barren old woman.
and B, all her friends are starting their period, so she feels really left out.
All my friends are doing it and I'm like some kind of freak.
You're not a freak. You'll start your period?
Her commenting about becoming a barren old woman, though, you know this girl's receiving some serious religious indoctrination when she thinks her womanhood depends on whether or not she's able to have children. Well, that's a whole complicated mess in and of itself. The partner with this plot line is Eric, the dad. And this is what was so weird to me. Eric is so concerned about being able to talk to his daughter about her period.
Hey, by the way, did you start your period yet? Because, I was once your age myself, and
He wants to be super involved with his daughter about this to the point where he says it's his dream? It's his dream?
She's probably never going to be like her older sister and ask you to just sort of run out to the drugstore and pick up a big blue box of Slender regulars.
They don't take away my dreams.
Eric, dude, I just love to go buy tampons for the people I love. To the point where he's like depressed about his daughter being uncomfortable talking with him. You want your kids to feel comfortable talking with you about anything, but his fixation on being able to talk about this specifically, this is, it feels like a little much to me. Throughout the episode, we see him trying to talk to her about her period. The conversation just feels super intrusive and it does not go over well.
What's she doing?
Dad, no!
And it gets to the point where eventually dad needs to back off and let mom have this conversation.
Hi.
Can you please tell Dad to stay out of this?
But the thing is, she hasn't even started her period. She doesn't have it yet. And they're all so concerned. It's like all she can think about. There's just a little bit too much obsessing over this girl's period. Just a little bit too much for me. Anyway, we eventually get to the point where mom has a conversation with Lucy. Mom quotes a scripture to her. And you would think, since this is like a Christian type show, that they would quote scripture all the time. They actually really don't. This is one of the few times in the season that there is like some kind of scriptural reference where the mom says, for everything there is a season, basically. Trying to comfort Lucy and tell her, you're gonna start your period when it's the right time. Unfortunate that she used that quote because when they're at church on Sunday, Eric uses that quote to talk to the congregation.
For everything, there is a season.
And Lucy, sitting in the congregation, thinks that her dad is about to start talking about her period in front of everyone. So she gets up and books it out of the church, making a scene. How much drama can you manufacture about this? This is crazy. So here we've got these two plot lines. Mary wanting to kiss boys, Lucy starting her period. Well, believe it or not, there comes a point where these two plot lines intersect. Mary and Lucy are out on a run together. Lucy is so hopeful that she'll start her period on this run that she brings a tampon with her in like her little jogging shorts. Okay. All right, that's a decision. That's a decision that you made. Well, while they're out running, they run into Jeff. Apparently, Mary has had a crush on this boy for like 4 years. They stop and they talk with him for a little bit, and Mary's all like, oh, you should come play basketball with me. Meanwhile, Lucy pulls something out of her pocket, and the tampon falls onto the ground. She is mortified. This tampon scene made me cringe in real life, in real time. And also, while Lucy and Mary are out together, we learn that Lucy's type that she's into is Prince Charles?
Who's your type? Prince Charles.
But he's a snob.
That's just his public persona. I bet he's really sensitive and shy.
Now we're going to talk about Matt's plotline for this episode and how Mr. Pastor Man, Eric, I'm a little bit concerned about your methods here. So here's what happens. Eric saw Matt smoking. So Eric takes Matt out to have some food and talk about it.
I'll have a cup of coffee black, and my son will have, what is it you smoke? Filter, non-filter?
Also, there's a supernatural disappearing waitress in the mix here, which is kind of a fun lore for this show.
Can I get you boys anything?
No thanks.
Oh, come on, just bring whatever you have.
Look, I don't smoke.
Actually, though, like, what happened to her? Where did she go? Anyway, there's this line when Eric confronts Matt and he's like talking about cigarettes.
So what? It's not like it's pot, it's just cigarettes.
Not really a good point, Matt.
Well, it's not pot. As we all know, marijuana isn't called devil's lettuce for just no reason. It's from the devil, and it's the devil and Satan and drugs bad drugs, pot bad. But there's a whole episode about that, so we'll get back to that later. Eric seems to be holding out an olive branch and offers Matt a job to help him pay for his cigarettes. Matt takes the job, and turns out when he shows up, the job is for an old woman who is a smoker. Matt spends a day with her, and this woman has like oxygen and she's acting crazy, like constantly talking about cigarettes.
What, are you trying to blow me to smithereens? I can't smoke and use this thing at the same time.
And just like begging Matt to buy her some cigarettes. To the point where she goes kind of crazy on him and Matt quits. Matt finishes this job and sees the horrors of smoking cigarettes, so he vows to never again smoke a cigarette. Yep, good decision, Matt. Yes, smoking is objectively bad for you. Probably shouldn't be doing it when you're 16. Plot twist. Turns out Eric hired this woman to pretend to have lung cancer or something.
How'd it go?
Worked like a charm. It was the most fun I've had in years. I'll send you the bill for the oxygen.
Well, you do that, and I'll call you during the week.
Which A, he blew a lot of money on this ruse. Good thing it worked. B, what kind of manipulative parenting is this? This is outrageous. But this is our magical Reverend Pastor Man Eric. He's got all the magical powers of God, so every plan that he makes works every time. Flawless. Man's a genius. Also, fun fact, the lady that pretended to be smoking, she's like a recurring character in this season. Matt never puts two and two together about the cigarettes. Like, we just all forgot about how she pretended to be someone like dying of lung cancer. Finally, to conclude the storylines of episode 1, the least interesting plot, Simon is just desperate for a dog. And he's actually super cute about it.
You know, a dog is a lot less trouble than a baby.
He starts using his religion to his advantage when both of his parents say no to getting a dog, and he decides to take it to God instead. He is constantly throughout this episode just praying for a dog, asking God for a dog, making deals like, hey dad, if a stray dog appears in our yard today, that's gonna be from God and I get to keep it. Simon is relentless about this dog.
It's just that I was the baby for a long time and I miss the individual attention. And I can get that from a dog without having to bother you so much.
I see.
And after much prayer and after much deliberation, a dog does in fact appear in the front yard.
Stay right there, don't move!
Except it was not from God, it was from Annie. She went to the pound just to look. They named the dog Happy, and Happy is a recurring character throughout the rest of this season, which I'm very happy about and seems fun. And I'm very proud of Simon for getting himself a little dog. Speaking of this dog just understands English clearly, perfectly.
Sit. Okay, speak. Okay, now roll over. Roll over. Wow! He's a genius!
Yeah, I'll say. Also, Matt looks at their new dog and he figures out that the dog is pregnant somehow. Like, he just knows. A perfect magical miracle dog to go along with this magical miracle family. Good news, Lucy's period finally starts.
Yes!
And Ruthie is freaking adorable.
Hi, Daddy.
Tell him.
Dad finally learns a bit of boundaries here, and instead of trying to insert himself into Lucy's period problems, he suggests that all the girls go out for dinner to celebrate Lucy starting her period, which I think is a great idea. But then Lucy asks him if he will go to the drugstore to buy her some tampons. And Eric starts to cry because he's so happy that his daughter wants him to buy some tampons, because that's a very normal human thing to do. The family finds out that Mary has invited Jeff over to hang out with her. Matt is super mad, and Dad is mortified and is now starting to regret telling Mary that she can date older boys. There's this whole thing where Mom didn't tell Dad about going to get the dog, and Dad didn't tell Mom about telling Mary she can date older boys, so they just kind of say, oh, well, we're even. Our marriage communication will do better next time. Matt is a little bit concerned about Mary wanting to date his friend, and so they have a little chat where they conclude that if she still likes him in 30 days, then Matt is okay with them dating. But then she confesses that she's liked him since she was 10, so, it doesn't look like this is going to go away anytime soon. We'll get back to that later in this season as well. The episode ends with Grandma and Grandpa coming into town, and there's this really ominous feeling about it, and there's this kind of really intense moment where Grandma and Grandpa are offering to spend a lot of money on the family. The kids walk out and they drop the bomb that Grandma has cancer. There's not much hope for her, and so she's not even going to try treatment. She's just going to live her best life until the end. And I just gotta say, also, this is a Christian show, but it's surprisingly horny for a Christian show. Like, it's just so horny. Especially in the first few episodes, Mom and Dad are like going at each other a lot, like lots of suggestive stuff. But then while the grandparents are in town, Annie, the mom, is like, oh, we can't have sex while my parents are here.
Will you stop? I am not going to have sex with you while my parents are here.
Okay.
What? Why? It's my parents, so we can't have sex right now because my parents are in our house, and that's weird. The funny thing about this, though, is in a few episodes, Eric's parents come into town, and he's like,
I can't. My parents are right down the hall. It's just...
And you are what, 12?
When they're here, yes.
oh, we can't have sex when my parents are here. What, are you 12? She did the same thing when her parents were in town. So they're like super horny for each other all the time, but not around their parents. Parents can't know about sex. No, they can't know that I have sex in my own house. Wild. Anyway, we find out Grandma has cancer, and that is the end of episode 1. Episode 2. Episode 2 is also just wild. This show is so much. We're continuing the plot line with Grandma and Grandpa, Grandma having cancer. This actually infuriated me. This made me so angry because the whole time Grandma's like, oh, I don't want to tell the kids. I don't want the younger kids to have to worry about this. Like, I don't want them to know it all.
I don't want the kids to have to deal with this. It wouldn't be fair to them.
And the only person who finds out is Matt, because Matt can tell something's weird, and so he pries it out of his parents. Are like, yeah, Grandma has cancer, but don't tell the kids. And Matt agrees, like, yeah, we shouldn't tell the kids. No one should tell the kids. We don't want them to have to think about this kind of thing. We don't want them to have to worry about this kind of thing. Dude, you're gonna die. They're treating it like it's some financial problem that only grown-ups need to worry about, when in reality, this is going to impact them deeply. So you should probably talk to the kids about it. This is so infuriating to me that they just hide it from the kids. And because of that, the kids have no idea, and so they're not really going to get a chance to say goodbye to their grandma who's dying. Believe it or not, kids can actually be pretty smart and resilient. Kids can work through difficult issues like grief and loss. You just have to talk to them about it. Ugh! Okay, sorry. That just makes me so angry. Also in this episode, we meet a new character named Jimmy Moon. Jimmy Moon is the boy that Lucy has a crush on. They see each other at school, and Jimmy comes up to her and he's like, did you hear a rumor that I have a crush on you? And she just kind of freezes up and is like, I don't know. And then he walks away, but she does have a crush on him. He has a crush on her. Kind of cute. Okay, not gonna lie. I'm a sucker for a romance, even if it's dumb 12-year-olds. Okay, now the big plot line for this episode is crazy. So we find out that Matt stayed out all night. He didn't come home. He spent the night at someone's house. And so everyone in the house is like, ooh, was he making out with a girl all night? What was going on? Well, he did stay the night at a girl's house, but he claims that he fell asleep on the couch on accident and nothing happened between them, that they're just friends. He's super apologetic. He's like, it was an accident. I was exhausted. I was helping out a friend. I fell asleep on the couch. I'm so sorry. But, Dad doesn't really believe him, so he gets his car privileges taken away for a few weeks. Also, randomly placed in this episode, just a really weird writing decision and makes zero sense to me. Like, zero sense. Eric goes to a hospital for some reason, and like the dog has been eating his shoes, and so his shoes are all messed up, and this nurse comes up to him and is just major hitting on him, acting like she's on a dating reality TV show. That's like how dramatic and heavy she puts on the flirting.
I haven't seen you around here before.
Oh, I'm Eric Camden. The Reverend Eric Camden.
Oh, that's a good one.
That was my wife.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, married for 18 years.
I don't see a wedding ring.
I really am married, and I've got 5 kids.
Doesn't everyone?
Love Island, Seduce a Married Reverend edition. But this nurse offers to like take his shoes to a shoe repair store.
Look, I don't know what your real story is, but I think I know aching feet when I see them. So if you'd like me to take them across the street to the shoe repair, I could have them stretched for you.
He agrees, and there's this heavy undertone of like, this is going to become an affair. It feels like this is going to be an affair. This is going to be something that happens. There's another part later in the show where it's brought up and he acts all weird and shady about it.
What happened to your shoes?
Oh, this nurse took them to the shoe shop to be stretched, only it closed for the weekend.
Was she pretty?
What's the extra place?
You're having an affair, dude, right? Like, that's what's going on? No, it's just in the show. It's just in the episode for some reason.
I just have...
Back to the main plot line, we learn that Matt's friend is named Renee. She calls to the house and talks to Mom, and Mom is like, oh, come over for dinner. Well, Renee shows up for dinner. Turns out she's pregnant. She is very pregnant. And clearly it wasn't Matt's, because Matt was dating that girl smoking cigarettes.
Are you two gonna have a baby?
Simon! No. I mean, I'm gonna have a baby, but Matt's not the father.
Dad confronts Matt and he's like, hey, it's great that you're friends with this girl and it's great that you're trying to help her and like be a nice friend, but she needs her parents right now and her baby daddy right now, not you. But Matt, chivalrous and wonderful Matt, best character in this show, gold star for Matt. He's helping her because her parents aren't involved. Her dad actually disowned her because she got pregnant. She has no one to help her out, which really sucks. And you want to know what sucks even more? She only had sex one time, and she got pregnant. What's very Christian about this show is that pretty much any time someone makes a mistake that's considered unchristian to do, they experience immediate and terrible consequences. As you do, as you should. When you sin, you evil, vile, yucky sinner, you will deal with the consequences of your worldly, sinful actions, okay? Am I ever gonna deal with the consequences of my judgmental, sinful actions? Next question. Renee is in the kitchen with Annie talking about how awful it is that her life is now over because she got pregnant. Right, because single moms can't amount to anything, ever. Obviously.
This just isn't where I saw my life going. I mean, I always thought I'd be a singer, a music teacher, or an astronaut. Anything but an unwed mother.
Anything but an unwed mother? Oh, the scandal of being unwed. I have a little rant about this as a single mother myself. I feel like there's this culture around being a single mother. Like, oh, what did you do to get yourself in this situation? As if it's always the woman's fault and as if it's always a horrible, terrible thing. Being a single mother is seen as a red flag in and of itself. Meanwhile, single dads are sort of praised and seen as heroic and wonderful. And we actually do see that in this show where there's a single dad later and he's seen as just this wonderful hero. And you know what? That just kind of sucks. Anyway, I digress. Luckily, Renee has a little bit of hope.
Well, you know, maybe I can be the first singing unwed mother astronaut.
Which I hope she does, because it is still very possible to succeed and figure out your life as a single parent, as difficult as it is. Anyway, Eric decides to take matters into his own hands because he is a reverend and that's what he does. He gets his hands all sticky in other people's business. Eric shows up unannounced to Renee's dad's house and does not go well.
I'm a friend of your daughter's, and I don't have a daughter.
Her dad's a dick. After having not much success with Dad, Eric goes out to find baby daddy. Apparently he's been super uninvolved, he doesn't have a job, and he's like, oh, I didn't even know my kid was gonna be a girl. That's great. This man clearly has no desire to be involved. I don't know, guilting him to be involved probably is not gonna help. Probably just gonna cause a lot of turmoil and emotional whiplash for Renee, but okay. Get in other people's business, Eric, because it's what you do best. Well, Renee starts going to church with the family. She's a singer, so she's now part of their choir, and they give her like this whole song as a solo to sing. It's not that good. It's super cringy. Her voice is fine, but the voiceover part is just done so poorly. And love around me. But Renee's dad shows up at church because, like I said, Eric has magical powers. And everyone who talks to him decides, you know what? I'm just gonna stop being a prejudiced bigot who kicked my daughter out at age 17 because she got pregnant for having sex one time. Maybe I was being a little bit unreasonable because that's what Reverend Powers do. Thanks, God, for only doing your job in a television show. Last thing about this episode I wanted to point out. Throughout this episode, there's a continuation of Mary having a crush on Jeff, and they're hanging out together. And everyone's kind of like, hey, you can hang out with him, just don't kiss him. Give it some time. Make sure you're actually serious before you kiss. You know, Matt was like, if you still like him in 30 days, then you can date him. Well, we've skipped all that because Dad walks out the front door and sees Jeff and Mary there. What's funny to me about this is just how quickly Eric just accepts it and turns around and walks away, and then they never speak of it again. I kind of love that because that is not the reaction that a lot of strict Christian parents would give. A surprisingly lax, chill stance for a religious father to take. I feel like that's lax, or maybe I was just raised in a cult. Who knows? Episode 3. First item of business. This episode is where we learn about Ruthie's imaginary friend, Huey, because Huey is actually a surprisingly important running plot for this season. Just wanted to point that out. This is also the episode where we start getting a little bit more of Jimmy Moon interactions with Lucy. They actually go on a little 12-year-old date, and Jimmy is surprisingly smooth for a 12-year-old.
So did you bring your little videos?
Well, actually, it's the director's cut of a French film that hasn't been released yet.
Maybe I'll pull up a bowl of popcorn and join you.
Not necessary. Copy one for you.
Okay, Jimbo. You've drawn first blood, but it's only the first round. It's early.
Boxing metaphor.
The main plot of this episode follows Grandma and Grandpa and Grandma's cancer journey, which looks like them just living it up. Annie goes and visits her parents in Arizona and sees them drinking wine and spending lots of money, being extravagant, and it seems a little off to her.
Please, first class is never filled.
First class?
It's the only way to fly.
So Grandma and Grandpa are back in town with Annie, and everyone starts pointing out how Grandma and Grandpa are acting super weird.
You think Grandma and Grandpa are acting a little weird?
A little. The whole family's weird.
When really all they're doing is just blowing their money. Like, they're just living it up, spending their money, enjoying their life. But it turns out there was a reason that they were living it up so much, because Grandma ends up passing away that night in their home.
I love you, Annie. But I have to go now.
And keep in mind, the kids still don't know that she's dying. So we'll deal with the ramifications of that in the next episode. One notable part from episode 3 is about Matt and how Matt just cannot catch a break. Matt gets in trouble all the time for stuff that like really isn't his fault or is just like very innocent. Like in the last episode, he got in trouble and lost his car privileges because he fell asleep on the couch at Renee's house. Well, in this episode, Matt still has his driving privileges revoked, and he really wants to take this one girl out on a date. So he kind of finagles a way to get car privileges by doing a Meals on Wheels run for his father, using his father's Meals on Wheels van. After doing his Meals on Wheels runs, he meets up with this girl at a little restaurant, and this sequence of events is just...
No thanks, I'm the designated underage driver.
what I said earlier about sin having immediate horrible consequences? Yeah. Let's dissect everything that happens in this scene. They hop in the car. She pulls out a beer out of nowhere, is like, hey, you want some beer? He's like, no, I'm driving. And she's like, okay, more for me. Then Matt starts backing out, not looking, goes to kiss her while backing out the car and backs 2 feet into a cop car, which is parked directly behind the van. And then the alcohol spills all over both of them. Matt then gets in trouble for hitting a cop car and drinking alcohol when he didn't drink the alcohol. People keep pointing out that he smells like beer, and the cops all like, nice cologne, man.
I wasn't drinking. Well, that's an interesting cologne you're wearing.
And then his dad later is like, you smell like beer.
Do I smell beer?
I don't think beer is that potent, is it? Like, he had a little bit spilled on his clothes. That's not gonna make you smell like beer, is it? I wouldn't think so, but he gets in trouble again for that, for something that was pretty innocent, honestly. Episode 4 is the chaotic funeral episode. And is the funeral in Arizona with Grandma and Grandpa's family and friends? No, the funeral is being done at Eric's church, which is fine, I guess, except the whole funeral ends up being about everything except Grandma. None of these people knew Annie's parents. They're just all there because they go to church with them. Not the funeral I would have wanted. My daughter and her family and 100 of their closest strangers from the congregation. Essentially what happens in this episode is that Grandpa pieces out, doesn't want to go to the after party, does not know how to deal with his emotions, so he just leaves. And no one knows where he went.
Somebody order a cab? That would be for me.
What's the rush?
It's time to move on.
But, well, at least let us drive you to the airport.
It's not necessary, sweetie. I'll be fine.
The other plot in this episode that is baffling to me. There's a couple at the funeral after party that's just from Eric's church, and they were recently married, the newlyweds. They're being like super dramatically all over each other. The wife of this couple, whose name I didn't catch, pulls Eric aside at the party and is like, oh, I'm sorry to burden you with this. I know this just isn't the right day or right time or place, but I think my husband's cheating on me. Yeah, not appropriate. This is not the time. Then the husband goes up to him too. And this is where stuff gets just wild and is like, oh no, something's so wrong. It's all an act. We're not really a happily newlywed couple because I made this huge, horrible mistake. But you know what? A pastor doesn't set boundaries. A pastor is at the whims of God at all times. So he decides to talk to this couple.
I'm a tortured man.
Tortured how?
I'm tortured because I'm a bigamist.
Yeah, so turns out the husband isn't cheating. He's a bigamist? Man's labeling himself like it's a sexuality. The big conflict with this couple is that the husband's divorce wasn't finalized before he got married, so the marriage is void. He's been acting super weird, and the wife thinks that he's cheating. And instead of just telling her, oops, sorry, maybe we should have postponed our wedding a little bit. My divorce wasn't finalized. No, we're gonna have a big dramatic cry session about it instead.
I can't.
Steve?
Reverend, please. You tell her. Please.
You're having an affair, aren't you?
No, Reverend. Tell her.
I just can't tell her. I just can't say it. You say it, Reverend. You say it. As if this little bit of legal mishap is the end of the world and going to end their marriage. It's not that serious, dude. It's okay. You're gonna be okay. Yeah, everything's fine, and Eric just remarries them again at the end of the episode. So it was a weird, twisty-turny story for this episode. I don't know about that. Another crazy plot of this episode is that Matt's friend Renee, who's pregnant, is at the after party for the funeral because the whole congregation is there apparently. And apparently her baby daddy and her dad are in her life again because of the magical powers of Eric. However, they are the only two people not at the after party, so Renee is out of luck for when her water breaks. Yeah, Matt gets his car privileges back just so he can take Renee to the hospital. They're frantically calling to try and get her baby daddy and her dad, who are out at a comic book convention together. Everyone's trying to get a hold of them to come to the hospital, but no luck. Just Matt. Just Matt at the hospital with Renee. Everyone keeps calling him the dad, and he's like super uncomfortable, and then he witnesses the birth, and he is super traumatized. Remember how Mary was like big crushing for 4 years on Matt's best friend Jeff? And they were making out on the porch 2 episodes ago, remember that? Well, apparently Mary is suddenly sick of Jeff. I don't know how long it's been. It doesn't seem like they've been together that long, not even the full 30 days that they were supposed to be. And Mary is just fed up with Jeff because according to her, he's being super clingy. Mary tells Matt about this. Matt goes up to Jeff and kind of gives him a pointer to play hard to get so that Mary won't be so fed up with him being clingy. And Jeff does it.
Ah, never mind. I got a lot of stuff I gotta go do. Pretty busy, you know.
And it works. Mary's all of a sudden kind of super into the fact that he's being aloof. Until Lucy spills the beans to Jeff that Mary was going to break up with him. And he's like, what? No, everything's great with us. Oh, Jeff, sweet, sweet Jeff. No. They do end up having a conversation and she does break up with him. They try to still be friends, so at the end of the episode, they're sitting playing basketball together, just kind of feeling out their friendship and how they want to make it work, when Matt shows up after seeing childbirth happen.
Tonight I saw what kissing can lead to, so I think you'll both understand when I tell you I think you should cool it for a while.
Okay. Yeah, we'll break up.
Guess this is it then.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's break up. If only every breakup was that simple. That conversation stemmed from Matt being so traumatized by childbirth he doesn't even want his sister to date anyone. He's almost treating it like he's a veteran.
Tonight I saw what kissing can lead to.
The things that I've seen, no man should ever see. Anyway, we never see Jeff again, so you can forget about him. Episode 5. Now this is around the time that I started giving titles to the episodes. Not their actual titles or names, but for my own way of categorizing them. This episode is the one I call the racism episode. It's a super heavy commentary on racism, and they handle the racial issues pretty well for the 90s, except a couple of things. In this story, we're getting some new characters introduced, and we meet the Hamilton family. Eric went to school, Reverend school, I guess, with Reverend Hamilton, who's the dad of this family. Reverend Hamilton is in charge of a church for Black people. I mean, I don't know how the lore works exactly, but it's pretty much designated or known that it's a Black church. But we see on the news that Reverend Hamilton's church was burnt down. Whoever committed the arson has essentially said that they're gonna come back and do it again, probably to the Hamilton family in their own home. So yeah, it's a little bit heavy, a little bit of a heavy atmosphere going on here. Well, because of all this turmoil, they sort of combine churches. So now we've got a little mixer going on, which is going great until afterward when the Hamilton family comes over to our main family's home and the kids are interacting with each other and it's just super awkward.
So Keisha, are you still dating that guy you were dating?
Hi. I don't know how to talk to a Black person.
Me too.
But then we find out that because this family's home is most likely in jeopardy, they are going to be staying with our main family for a little bit until they feel safe to go back home. So throughout the episode, we see the kids getting more comfortable with each other and spending time with each other. And one of the girls teaches Lucy about Black culture in a very interesting way. 90s rap and some... There's another part of this episode where Simon is with one of the younger Hamilton kids at school, and a kid seriously drops the N-word like hard R. So that's one of the bonding moments to help our family learn about racism and overcome their prejudices. There's a running joke from this episode that happens a few times where someone puts salt on butter and is like, oh, you know, if you put salt on butter, it gets hot. You like hold your hand above it, feel the heat coming off of the salt and the butter, and then you like smush the hand down into the butter. Butter trick. Well, I'll have you know, the butter trick just solves racism. I think it's supposed to be implied throughout the episode. The kids are feeling a little weird because the other kids are Black. There's this weird tension going on that feels like it's race related, but that tension is resolved completely by the butter trick. So
first you put the salt on, it's really hot. Feel it, it's hot.
Racism solved. Episode 6. This episode I titled the Halloween episode. Eric hates Halloween.
Daddy hates Halloween.
I do not.
Yeah, you do, Dad.
You do, honey. You always have.
And at first I thought it was a very Christian thing. You know, some Christians are super against Halloween because it's the devil's holiday, obviously. So I was thinking the story was kind of going to go that direction because Eric just hates Halloween. He's got some beef with Halloween.
You hate Halloween.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do, Dad.
Annie comes up to Eric and she's like, hey, today I ran into someone from your hometown who's our age named Henry Bernard.
Howard, no. Henry Bernard.
Something's going on with Henry. What? I don't know. Let's find out. Another interesting thing about Eric is we learned that when he was a kid, he was obsessed with Davy Crockett. Just loves Davy Crockett, loves the coon cap. And also turns out that's the same reason why he hates Halloween. When he was in grade school, like 3rd grade maybe, the teacher brought around some Halloween hats and costume pieces for everyone to pick out. And Henry grabbed the coon cap. Eric got all angry and upset, like, hey, give it to me. I want the coon cat because I like Davy Crockett. But then Henry's like, I got it for you. I was getting it for you. Like a grade school tussle, a little grade school argument. That is why Eric hates Halloween. That is the reason, because that memory haunts him to this day of when he was fighting with his friend over a Davy Crockett hat. At the end of this episode, he goes to this guy's house because they just moved into town and he's like, hey, I'm Eric. Do you remember me? And the guy's like, no. No, I don't remember you. Why are you here? And he's like, oh, well, I brought you this coon cap and I wanted to give it to you to say sorry because it's been haunting him and eating away at him for that long. And the guy's like, oh. He kind of gets a look on his face where it seems like he remembered. Like, I think they're trying to imply that he remembered the fight because then he goes, I got it for you, Eric. It's a good commentary on how we tend to hyper-focus on our own issues and our own mistakes a lot more than other people do. Like, most people will forget the weird things we do or mistakes that we make pretty immediately after we do them, but we sit and stew on stuff. And literally for, I don't know, how many years? 30 years maybe or more, Eric has been in turmoil over this one thing that happened to him in grade school. It's ruined all his Halloweens. But at least he got to, fix that trauma in his head in perfect time. In perfect time for the costume party and the pumpkin carving contest. Also in this episode, Matt has another unfortunate encounter with dating where there's this girl that he wants to take to a dance who just broke up with her boyfriend named Roxanne. And Roxanne heavily hints that she wants Matt to take her, so Matt asks her to the dance and she's like, okay, great, now you have to wear this Cyrano de Bergerac costume so that they could be Cyrano and Roxanne. And if anyone is not familiar with that story, it's about a woman who falls in love with a man who is supposedly really ugly because he has a giant, huge nose. She falls in love with him for his poetry. But this Roxanne girl is apparently so obsessed with the fact that her name is Roxanne and she wants a Cyrano for Halloween. So she gets this costume for Matt. But Matt is really, really set on being...
Same thing I always go as, a hobo.
Which even in 1996, they were bringing up that maybe that's a problematic costume to have.
I'm not sure it's appropriate to use another person's misfortune for our entertainment.
And Matt's all like, oh no, it's fine. My character
is a hobo by choice. See, he's rejected bourgeois values for the simple life of riding the rails and eating beans out of a can.
He wants to live the free life. Okay, Matt. It is kind of a funny running joke, though, because at the end, Eric brings it back up again, and it ends up being a little like, oh, haha, that's a pretty good joke.
Don't you think it's inappropriate to use some poor animal's misfortune for our entertainment?
Oh, it's okay. This raccoon became a hat by choice.
So Matt shows up to pick up Roxanne for the party in his costume. Roxanne is like a total mean girl about it, and she's like, my date is not going to be wearing that. That will make me look like I'm dating someone who lives on the streets. Why is this plot in the story? Why did this happen to Matt? But anyway, he gives her a nice burn.
You look really, really beautiful in that dress. But in spite of your appearance, I gotta say, the thrill's gone for me, babe.
He burns her real good, and I appreciate that because this girl is actually crazy. Thrill's gone for me, babe. Thrill's gone for me, babe. Oh, I wish I could be that badass. Also, another potentially problematic thing that happens in this episode, Lucy makes friends with a guy who's like 40, probably, in his 40s, definitely. And he's like this creepy neighborhood guy that all the kids pick on because he's scary. He has like a scar on his face. And it's just really weird because she's befriending this older man throughout the episode. And it makes me personally feel very uncomfortable. And she even tells her dad that she's hanging out with this man. And he's like, oh, yeah, okay. Like, dude, no. He doesn't do anything to Lucy. He's just they like bring him back into the neighborhood and bring him to the costume party with the pumpkin carving contest, and he enters a pumpkin under Lucy's name, so Lucy ends up winning the pumpkin carving contest. And then the whole like big reveal at the end of this episode is the pumpkin. It's Lucy. He carved her face into a pumpkin. Creepy behavior. No, thank you. We are not glorifying this. No, do not hang out with creepy old men when you're 12 and ever also. Now, episode 7 is my personal favorite. I like to call it the pot episode. Told you we'd get back to it later. Eric and Annie are out and about when they see this kid named Terry Daniels. And Terry is someone that Eric helped get into rehab. Now, it's not revealed why he's in rehab until later, but it's pot. It's just pot. He was smoking pot and he went to rehab for that. So this is going to be fun. Apparently, Terry just got out of rehab and it's been 30 days since he went into rehab before. That is too short, apparently, because the rehab program he was doing, I guess, was longer.
It sure is remarkable how fast you got out of rehab. I mean, only 30 days?
Eric is furious with this kid. He's like, why are you out? You should be in rehab.
You call me a liar?
No, I'm just saying you're not telling me the truth.
I use my magical reverend powers to help you get out of juvie if you promise to go to this rehab center and you left early, so.
What you need is to get back into rehab.
Just butt out of my life.
Terry!
You're in trouble, mister. But okay, first of all, 30 days is not enough?
Patients are still sneaking out to smoke a joint the first month of rehab.
That's crazy. That's crazy. 30 days feels like a very long time to be in a rehab center, especially for marijuana. He's a 17-year-old kid, and I get that your brain is still developing and you shouldn't be doing this at this age. But again, it's pot. Going to rehab and being off of it for 30 days is you're gonna be fine. Yet in this show, they treat it like it is the worst thing in the world. And it baffles me, especially with the hindsight now of cannabis being legalized largely across America. Even in Utah, which is super religious and super anti-drug, marijuana is still legalized for medical purposes. There are people who have marijuana every single day for medical purposes, and they're fine. It's just baffling to me to see the perspective that these really religious writers had in the 90s on marijuana. So let's talk some more about it. They portray this kid like he's super shady and dark and like mischievous, just into some bad stuff. They're portraying him as like a very stereotypical teenage drug user when it's just pot that he's been doing. Eric goes and talks to this kid's parents, and his own parents are mortified that he smokes marijuana. They blew all their money sending him to rehab, and then they kicked him out of the house because apparently the rehab center told them that that was the right thing to do to help him, was to kick him out of the house. So this guy's now living on the streets because of marijuana. Talk about those immediate consequences to sin, you know? What? If someone's struggling, like let's say he really does have a severe drug addiction, kicking him out of the house and putting him on the streets, you think that's gonna help? Who said that was a good idea? Take their license away. But the parents say some insane stuff.
You know what happens to these kids? The drugs become their family. He doesn't care about us. All he cares about is getting high. You know, I never really talked to him. By the time he was in trouble, I didn't even know who he was. 17. He's got no better life than a stray dog.
He's got no better life than a stray dog. Because of pot.
It's so hard.
And then after this whole situation, Eric goes around to all his kids and is like, please promise me you're never gonna do drugs. Please. He even asks 12-year-old Lucy if her friends do pot. And all the kids, of course, are like, of course, Dad, no, we're not gonna ever touch drugs. But man, the demonization of marijuana in this episode is so bad.
Tell me you'll never do drugs. Oh, and by the way, great game. Never do drugs. If anybody ever comes to you and offers you drugs, I want you to come and tell me, okay?
Dad, you've already told us this 100 times.
It is so clear, Eric, that you have never tried marijuana. It's very clear. It's apparent. We know. We know, Eric. You're a good boy. Okay. So at the end of the episode, Terry shows up at the Camden's house. Their last name is Camden. I just realized I never clarified that before. Eric invites him in, and then they call his parents, I guess, and that's the end of his plot line. We never see this kid again, at least not in season 1. At first, I was really concerned that this would be the one time that Eric's magic powers wouldn't work and they would not give this kid a happy ending because it's like a lesson about drugs. They sort of gave him a resolution where he shows up at the house and his face is like banged up, like, oh, he received the consequences of weed because he got in a fight, I guess. Because that's what weed does, is gets you punched in the face. So immediate consequences for sins, again. Also in this episode, Matt gets a job as a tutor for a pretty blonde girl and gets essayed by her, so that's cool. And like, it's not addressed. He just gets, kissed against his consent, and then he quits the job. So that's that whole plot line for Matt this episode. Also, we get a little bit of lore about Eric's binoculars. They get lost when Ruthie and Simon go out on an adventure. And we learn that Eric used those binoculars to look at sorority girls when he was in school. So, okay, Eric. Jeez.
Because your Uncle Sid gave them to you when you were in the seminary so you could see the sorority.
Episode 8. This one was so hard to watch. 2 plots for this one that are important. First, Simon tells Ruthie that he has a crush on this girl named Gabrielle.
F-G.
And he's talking her up.
I think this could be the one woman that I could love for the rest of my life.
He is obsessed with Gabrielle. Simon tells Ruthie, you can't tell anyone. You're the only one I've told about Gabrielle. It's a secret. The very next scene, they're sitting at dinner.
Good for blitzing.
Yeah, but Gabrielle says that...
But Gabrielle... Nothing?
Gabrielle? Who's Gabrielle?
No.
Well, she must be someone.
Of course not.
Anyway, we never hear of or see Gabrielle ever again, so I guess not really the love of his life. The other plotline of this episode, this is the one that made me just so angry. There's a woman who attends Eric's church who is in an abusive relationship. She is being physically, mentally, and emotionally abused by her husband, and she is wanting to leave the situation. So Eric is helping her out by getting her a hotel room. Very public in the middle of the day in a small town, because he's talking to her about her marriage and helping her get away from her husband.
I'm sure it has something to do with the church.
However, this woman is so concerned about other people knowing that this has been happening to her that she doesn't want Eric to tell anyone, not even his wife, why she needs his help. There's a couple things to unpack here for me. One, Eric needs to set a boundary. He needs to set boundaries here. He's very bad at this, like prioritizing his church duties over his own needs and his family's needs. I just think this is one of those situations where he's taking it a little bit too far, because obviously rumors start spreading everywhere about Eric and this woman and how they're having an affair when they're not.
The rumor is Abby's having an affair.
But because she doesn't want to say anything about it, all these rumors are going around.
You know, I bet that was him going into the hotel on 3rd Street.
And, it would have been so easy for him to be like, hey, my family is suspicious. Everyone in the neighborhood is suspicious. My wife is trying to give me the benefit of the doubt because she knows the ins and outs of my job. But it would really help my family life if I could just tell my wife what's going on with you. He could have said something like that, but no, he's like, okay, yeah, I won't tell anyone. That just baffles me and angers me and infuriates me. But anyway, there's chaos developing around them. Everyone's thinking that she and the Reverend are having an affair, and she just doesn't want to say that her husband is an abuser. Maybe you want your private life to be private, that's fine. Maybe at least let the Reverend's wife know about it so that everyone doesn't think you're cheating. But at the end of this episode, Eric actually gives her some really good advice that I like, where she's really worried about getting divorced, which is a fear I personally understand. I think a lot of people understand. When you're really religious and you want to get a divorce, it can get kind of tense and scary. But I really like what the encouragement Eric gives her, that this man was not being truthful with her, and so she made a decision based on a lie.
He says that if I divorce him, I'll go to hell. I promise to stay with him until death.
The real Jake or the Jake you thought you were marrying? You made a decision based on a lie. There's nothing that says you can't make a new decision based on the truth.
And I feel like that is very good advice. So, points for that, I guess.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used.
Episode 9. Oh, God. We're not even halfway through. Holy shit, this is so much. Why am I doing this to myself? Okay, episode 9 starts off strong with armed robbery. Matt and Annie are in the car. They pull over for like half a second, and all of a sudden, they're getting robbed at gunpoint. So that happens. Most notable thing from this is Matt and Annie are both very traumatized, and through this episode, they work through their trauma, and Annie's wedding rings got stolen. Also in this episode, there is an organist. Her name is Mrs. Hinkle.
Everyone in my bridge club is now carrying pepper spray. I'm a quick draw. I could bring down a rogue elephant if I had to.
She plays the organ at the church and has for many, many years, apparently, like 20 years or something like that. Annie mentions to Eric that she's been given the name of Mittens.
Everybody calls her Mittens because it sounds like she's wearing mittens when she plays the organ.
Thick ones. She has been playing so badly at the organ recently that people are starting to really notice and be a little judgy about it, which, you know, it happens. And Eric, he's all heartbroken, like, man, she's been with us for so long. It's such a shame to let her go. She served the church so much. She loves her job. But then at a choir practice, she actually is acting like a crazy person. So he fires her.
Oops.
She's all like, can I just have one more Sunday? And he's like, yeah, sure, have one more Sunday. She plays beautifully. She plays perfectly, because want to know why? She was pretending.
I've wanted some time off for years. I couldn't just walk away from the church. I'd go to hell.
She was so worried about going to hell, she didn't want to quit her job for the church. She intentionally sabotaged herself so that Eric would fire her so that she could be released from her job of organist because she thought that she would go to hell if she quit. No one's gonna point out how weird that is and how problematic that line of thinking is. Take on too much stress in your life because you think that's what God wants you to do, and out of fear of punishment. It's almost like that is not the healthiest way to live. And then at the end of this episode, Eric gives Annie a replacement ring for her rings that were lost.
A friend of mine gave me something so you wouldn't have to be afraid ever again.
It's a crazy replacement ring. Why? Why did he do that? Why did he give her that? A string would have been better. This is nonsense. Episode 10 is the alcohol episode, where essentially we learn that Eric's sister is a raging psycho alcoholic. She seems normal at first. She shows up and showers everybody with gifts, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, Aunt Julie, Aunt Julie. Everyone loves Aunt Julie. No, she's drinking. She's drinking. They just show her just drinking so much.
Wow, Aunt Julie. Sure do drink a lot of wine.
Builds up to the point where she freaks out and sort of attacks Simon.
Better let go. No! Simon, I'm not. Give me that damn key! Shut up and give me the key to the liquor cabinet!
And everyone is now freaked out by her because she is psycho. She's psycho. She's not just alcoholic. She's a psycho. They portray her alcoholism in such a dramatic way, and I just don't know. I just don't know about that. Like, I get the idea is to discourage people from becoming an alcoholic, but this is another level. This is something else. They end up kidnapping her from a bar and locking her in a bedroom in their house to help her. So that's cool. And then after she's been off alcohol a few days and has been like dealing with the sickness and the withdrawals, she's still acting like a psycho crazy person and like being super manipulative.
I mean, I'd been fine for 2 days. What's one beer? One little beer. Would you go get me one, sport?
Ends up turning into a demon.
It's okay. It's okay, Julie. Come on now. Come on.
So that's really stressful and not fun to watch. At the end of the episode, she kind of calms down and ends up calling a rehab center to commit herself.
I hope you guys are good because I'm sneaky.
Which is great. Good. Julie's trying to get better. Okay. After she calls the rehab center, they have a Thanksgiving dinner, and it's just the most perfect Thanksgiving day, even though she was a psycho literally yesterday. So that is how that episode ends. One little fun moment from this episode I really liked is this quote from Annie.
I've got one nerve left and you're on it. Fine.
That is such a good mom line, and I think I'm going to steal that. Thanks. Episode 11 is my least favorite episode, and I hated it. I hated it with a burning passion just because of this girl, Tia. This episode is about her. She has a rough home life. Her parents are divorced, and neither of them pay attention to her because they are business mom and business dad. Tia is getting no attention. She's like, please, someone pay attention to me. I need attention. Well, Matt brings her to church because he wants to date her. Tia falls in love with Matt's family.
Hey, Mom said you were up here. I thought you were hanging out at your dad's.
I was. I thought you were busy.
You want to do something?
Nah. I'd rather hang out with the girls.
Is acting like she's a sibling and doesn't actually want to date Matt, and it's just super weird and uncomfortable, and I don't like her. I don't like her. She makes me feel weird. I don't like her. And thus, I do not like this episode. The notable part of this is that Eric uses his magic to talk to both of her parents and get them to start loving her again. So, good job, Eric. Episode 12. Mrs. Bink comes back. Remember Mrs. Bink from the first episode? Yeah, Matt is helping out Mrs. Bink. Now they're just buddies, I guess. Matt is over there taking care of her, and she's like, please don't tell your dad. Please don't tell anyone that I need help because they'll send me away. They'll send me to a home. This is, again, getting Matt in trouble needlessly because he's always getting in trouble for what? So Mrs. Bink is like consistently asking Matt to come over and help her with little things, and then she starts to like lose her cognition. Like in the middle of the episode, she calls Matt at school, like through the school, pretends to be Aunt Gladys.
She couldn't reach her parents. She's not feeling well. She wants you to call immediately.
And so Matt talks to her on the phone. She's like, please come over. I need you, Matt. I need you. And he's like, I'm in school.
Look, I'll be over right after school.
No, you have to come now. I need you right now.
So he gets out of school, lies to get out of school to take care of this woman. He gets there and she's like, oh, hey. What are you doing here? Like, she doesn't remember. She doesn't remember that she called him. She doesn't remember anything. She is losing her mind, actually. She's unfit to be living in a house by herself.
What can I do for you, Mrs. Bink?
Oh, not a thing. I'm fine, thank you.
And Matt is understandably angry that she made him leave school for no reason. He leaves, and then she's like, fine, I'll do everything myself, and ends up falling down and, like, breaking her hip or something. So, great. So now Mrs. Bink ends up in the hospital. Eric finds out and comes to see her with Matt, and they talk about it, and you know what happens? Instead of sending this woman where she clearly needs to go, as a compromise, they have this family work for her, essentially, and be like her live-in helpers, a family who is living in their van, and they're really struggling, which I guess works out, because now she doesn't have to leave her house, and now this family has a home, and a way to kind of make some money as they're getting on their feet. The other main part of this episode is Lucy's 13th birthday. And Lucy is dead set on wanting to have a party with both boys and girls invited. That's her big thing. And her parents are like, no boys. No boys. Even though she basically has a boyfriend that could come over for a date at age 12. But having a party with boys and girls at age 13, that's not okay. No. So Jimmy, who's Lucy's little boyfriend guy, makes this master plan where he's going to do a surprise party for Lucy by getting his friend Dwight involved. Now, Dwight is quite the character.
Hey, I'm having a birthday party Wednesday night. Want to come?
I don't even know you.
I'm Dwight. Now do you want to come?
He just talks so weird and way over the top weirdness. Like, they really wanted to emphasize that this kid is a weirdo, okay?
I love parties. I love people. I'm a people person.
Jimmy comes up with this plan for Dwight to pretend that it's his birthday too, and that he's having a party so he can invite Lucy over to the party, and there would be boys and girls there like she wanted, but actually the plan was for it to be a secret surprise party for Lucy. But Lucy is understandably like, I don't want to do that because it's my birthday and I want my own party. I don't want to share my party with someone I don't know who's kind of a weirdo. It's a normal thing for a 13-year-old kid to feel, although she is being a little bit dramatic and rude about the whole thing, so I'm not on her side on this, unfortunately.
It's gonna ruin everything if I have to go to Dwight's party.
Lucy's kind of crazy, and we're learning this as the season progresses. Lucy talks to Mary about it a bit, and Mary's trying to tell her, you're being dumb, like this is what you want, you should go to this party. And Lucy's still like, no, but it's not my party, which, ugh. Girl, come on. After she says no repeatedly to going to Dwight's party, Jimmy confesses that it was supposed to be a surprise party for her, and she feels a little bit bad, but she's like, well, do you want to come to dinner at my house? And he's like, yeah, sure. And then they end up planning another surprise party with Dwight. They get all the people who were invited to Dwight's party, and they just have them come over to the house after dinner. Doesn't that defeat the whole purpose? The whole reason there was a conflict is because the parents didn't want Lucy to have a party with boys there at the house, but Jimmy plans it in a surprise party, and now all of a sudden it's fine. So I don't know what that was all about. At the end of this, they're dancing, and then there's a part where she's dancing with Dwight, and she's like, Dwight, thank you so much for helping out with this and for helping out with my birthday. So nice of you to do for being Jimmy's friend. And Dwight's like, yeah, at first it was about Jimmy, but actually I'm in love with you.
I think I'm in love with you, Lucy Camden.
Lucy's face is priceless. I love it. I love that face. It makes sense. You know what doesn't make sense, though, is immediately after this, where she's in her PJs talking to Mary.
I never thought of Dwight in that way before, but I got to thinking. In his own way, he's kind of sexy.
Yeah, she uses the word sexy.
I happen to be a dog person.
Oh yeah? So you have a dog?
No.
What is going on? Lucy, first your type is Prince Charles, and then you hang out with like a creepy old man for a while. You're dating Jimmy Moon, but now you think his best friend Dwight, who's in love with you, is sexy. Girl. You need to chill. Like, she needs to chill. Okay, episode 13. This is when we meet Eric's parents. I hate them. I hate them so much. They're essentially both, like, really controlling psycho parents. So you can tell there's this weird dynamic because it is written into the show. Everyone's sitting there anticipating Grandma and Grandpa coming, and they're like, you gotta make sure you do this, and you do this, and you call him Colonel because he served in the war, and he wants to be called a colonel. They're gonna give you the candy, and you take the candy, and you smile, even though it's disgusting candy. We love this candy, Grandma and Grandpa, and you deal with it because they're scary and they will hurt you emotionally if you do something wrong. And then we get the perspective of Grandma and Grandpa.
They've spotted us.
Oh!
All right. All right, time to paste on the smiles.
Ugh, why do we have to be here with our family and they want this candy?
You got the candy?
I don't know why they love it so much. It's ugly and it tastes terrible.
They don't want to be there. They don't like their family. Like, it's pretty apparent. I just hate it. I just hate it. I just hate it all. And if you think about it, these are their only grandchildren. Like, aren't they excited to see their grandchildren? No, they're not excited. They hate their grandchildren. They are actually so rude.
The middle girl, what's her name?
Lucy.
You know, she talks more than Eric does. If I get cornered like that again, I am going to swallow a Rockeye anti-armor bomb and throw myself out a window.
They sure push the envelope on Perky.
So, Colonel, Eric's dad, is criticizing him for how he lives and how he raised his family, and then points out that there is a kid hiding in his closet at the church. I don't know how. I don't know how he got in there. I don't know how the colonel knew he was there. He said he could hear him breathing. Okay.
How many people are breathing in this room? 3. All right, young fella, I think you've got some explaining to do.
There's this kid in the closet named George, the orphan.
I'm George, the orphan.
So they take George back home. Annie and Eric are discussing, like, maybe we should adopt him. Meanwhile, grandparents are acting oddly suggestive over a card game.
God, you're still as gorgeous as you were 43 years ago.
You ready to play?
Am I ready to play? Come here. The name of the game is 5-card draw.
When George the orphan comes in to talk to them.
I can't sleep. Want to deal me in?
And they're like, all right, you can drop the act with us, because they have superpowers and they can read minds, and they knew that he was lying. Apparently, George met Eric at an orphanage when he was doing one of his reverend rounds at an orphanage. So he stalked Eric in order to get Eric to adopt him. That was his plan. There's all this drama and back and forth, but eventually it's decided that the grandparents are going to adopt George the orphan, which apparently works out and helps mend some family drama. It's surprisingly easy for them to adopt him. Like, they just go to the adoption agency one time and get some paperwork and they're set. Like, done. Easy adoption process in California, apparently. Also, George is like wild, been living on his own, jumping around different homes, and he also learned how to hotwire a car at one point, so he's a crazy kid. But he ends up being perfect for the colonel and his wife because they're really strict and they don't believe in dreams, they believe in discipline, and apparently George is the same way, and the only dream he ever had was to be adopted by the colonel.
It's time you settled down and started some dreaming of your own.
I already did. My dream was to be with you.
So now he can live in a strict, controlling household with old people. It's what he wanted. At the end, there's this weird part where the colonel's like kind of apologizing to Eric for being a bad dad. And I think it's supposed to be this moment of growth and change, but it just feels super weird to me.
We haven't done so well with the father-son deal. Should we just try friends?
Yeah, sounds good.
Kind of like a cop-out. I'm not good at being a dad, so how about I just don't have that responsibility anymore? You're not my son anymore. You're just my friend, okay? Is that better? You like that better than me being a bad dad? Just your friend? Okay. Episode 14 is the patriotic episode, and this one is insane. Eric is super upset because he went to a sporting event, and he comes home and he's all like huffy and angry about it because this is the real reason. People don't know the national anthem.
Gets me every time. I can't for the life of me figure out why nobody knows the words to the national anthem.
The Star-Spangled Banner. People couldn't sing it at the sporting event. He is pissed. Okay, Eric is really mad about these other people not knowing lyrics to a song, and he's gonna make it everyone's problem.
Country is going to hell in a handbasket. I mean, the basic moral fiber is being ripped, torn to shreds. Half the country probably doesn't even know the Pledge of Allegiance. Half the country probably can't even spell allegiance.
he allowed to say that? This anger bleeds into the next morning too, okay? He is like still huffy about this in the morning.
What? I'm not in a bad mood.
Oh, good. I need to ask you a favor.
No.
I just wish people would worship this country like they're in a cult. Is it too much to ask for?
Now, Ruthie, the youngest, is really confused about why her dad's so mad about this. Ruthie is really worried that she doesn't know the national anthem, so Simon keeps trying to teach it to her throughout the episode.
We have to learn the Star Staple Banner.
There is another plot line here that we'll talk about, but this episode ends with the patriotic theme, so I'm just going to tell you how that happens. There is a random Latina woman who is in their house just hanging out with Simon and Ruthie. I don't know who she is. I don't know why she's there. I don't even know what her name is. But she's there. We never see her before this. We never see her after this. She's just here for this one specific reason, to talk about how proud she is to be an immigrant in the United States. Yeah.
Do you two know the story of how the song was written?
No. When did you learn it?
When I started to become a citizen.
I personally feel like this is a little bit weird. Like, it just makes me feel icky that they have this Latina character solely for the purpose of talking about how amazing America is and how grateful she is to have been in this country. It just feels a little bit weird. For any of you Latinos out there, I would love to hear your commentary on that specifically, because to me, that is a little bit wild. There is a continuation of the Lucy-Dwight plotline where Dwight has apparently been calling the house all the time and like harassing Lucy, and she no longer thinks that it's sexy. She ends up talking to Jimmy and Dwight and saying, Jimmy, you're my boyfriend, Dwight, you're just my friend, and cutting that off quick. So good for you, Lucy. Now, the other main plot of this episode is super dramatic, just so dramatic, but very entertaining. Apparently, all of the varsity sports teams at the school have this tradition where they go to a restaurant called the Varsity. They steal a glass or some sort of dish piece from this restaurant, and then they take their stolen objects to a big sports banquet that they do. But essentially, if you want to be a real varsity player at this school, you have to steal something from this restaurant. Mary has this dilemma. She ends up stealing it, and Matt takes the blame for her, and he gets in trouble again for something that he didn't do.
What's this?
Matt is just our unproblematic king who is also somehow a huge troublemaker, so I don't know. Poor Matt. He takes the blame, he tells his parents that he stole the cup, and his parents make him go back and return it. He returns it to the guy who owns the restaurant, and this guy, his name's Bob. He apologizes. You know what Bob's reply is? Golden, just mic drop.
Apology unaccepted. That's right, unaccepted. I'm pressing charges.
This actually gets to the point where Bob is in court with Matt to, essentially try and teach all the kids a lesson that they really should not steal from him. Well, guess what? Magic happens in the courtroom. All of a sudden, all the kids come in, like every kid in the varsity sports comes into the courtroom holding the stuff that they stole.
Your Honor, they're all a bunch of little thieves. I'm pressing charges. I want them all in jail.
The judge lets Eric take over the courtroom. Just super weird court situation. I don't think this could happen, ever.
Fine, I'll drop the charges. I want my stuff then.
Everyone gets to go home and everyone's happy. That's the story. It's definitely entertaining, I guess. Episode 15. This is the camping episode. This one really confused me. I'm not gonna lie. So we've got the Hamiltons back in this episode. The Camdens and the Hamiltons adults want to go on a little camping trip together.
I'm not really much of a camper.
You used to love to go camping.
Love is such a strong word.
The point is, I guess, that it's Valentine's Day, and so they're doing a Valentine's getaway, but it's not very romantic. It's like dark and cold, and they're intense, and none of them are happy. None of them want to be there.
I hate sleeping on a cold, damp ground. Big body of mattresses. I hate dirt.
Mrs. Hamilton gets a call from her ex-husband. Apparently, he calls her every Valentine's Day to just, say Happy Valentine's Day. Super weird. Also a weird thing, apparently her husband has never met this guy, doesn't know who he is, knows nothing about him, and they find out he's Irish. He's a white guy.
What kind of name is Kevin, anyway? Was he Irish or something?
As a matter of fact, he is Irish.
And him being Irish is apparently a big deal.
Irish?
You got a problem with the Irish?
He's Irish?
Where did that come from? This is so weird. Anyway, their camping trip kind of ends in a disaster and they end up going home early, which is good because shenanigans have happened at home whilst the parents were at the camping trip. The younger kids go to the movies and the older kids have a big party. Matt was like trying to do a date night. It's just chaos. The parents come home, they interrogate all the children individually to get everyone's story.
I don't know, about 20 kids?
Should have seen this guy hitting on Keisha.
It wasn't really a date. More like creative babysitting.
They all tell the truth.
It was completely irresponsible.
I confess, we made a mistake.
Mostly slept.
And then at the end, the parents are like, I guess we'll never know the full story.
I don't think we're ever going to know exactly what happened.
Sometimes it's best not to know.
They just told you the full story. They just told it to you. I don't know what you're confused about. That's what happened. There's this whole big deal about keeping the dog safe during the party. And of course, no one keeps the dog safe during the party. And the dog escapes the house and ends up getting hit by a car. Also, I didn't mention this, but the dog did have her puppies a couple episodes ago. So she's no longer pregnant, but she did get hit by a car. Because of course, there has to be a disaster. Obviously. Luckily, Happy is alive. Matt's at the vet with her. There's one lady working at this animal hospital, and she's like, oh yeah, normally we close and normally we don't let animals stay overnight, but I'm making an exception for you and for your dog. Why? That's so weird. Also, the dog is just being sedated. Like, that's all. It's just like on an IV drip, essentially. Like, not operating or doing anything on the dog, just like letting it sit there with an IV drip, which you could do that at home too. You don't have to stay at the vet's office all night. Like, I don't know why they're there. Then the whole family goes over to the animal hospital to be with the dog for the night. Instead of just taking the dog home to sleep, they all went and slept at the vet. Yeah, and then in the morning, the dog wakes up perfectly fine. Just totally fine.
Happy, you're okay. Matt!
Lady, you could have sent the dog home instead of changing your policy for one night and sleeping on your desk. Episode 16, meh. I don't really care about this episode. Essentially what happened is Lucy has a friend who her parents are divorced and her dad's not paying child support, and Eric swoops in and gets the dad to start paying child support because he's magic. Episode 17, ooh, this one's fun. Just because there's a new girl in this story, and I really like her. I think she's super pretty and I love her hair. I'm obsessed with her hair. Mary meets this girl, Camille, in detention. She seems super fun. She is super fun. However, I do not appreciate that this new girl, Camille, lies to Mary and disrespects her boundaries when she clearly states them, and also tricks Mary into doing a double date by telling her that she was going to a frat party. So,
Where's the party? This is the party. Me and Jason and you and Max.
Don't like that part about Camille. Otherwise, she seems pretty cool. The other part of this storyline is super interesting. Lucy is about to get confirmed into the church, which I'm not super familiar with mainstream Christianity terminology, but I'm assuming this is like her being officially recognized as a member of the religion. So she's going to do this little ritual ceremony. But there's a knock at the door. This man shows up and he's, I guess, an old friend from pastor school. He's kind of going through an existential crisis. It's pretty obvious. One thing he does is he talks to Lucy about her religion and about choosing to become a Christian. He's all like, well, you know, before I did this religion thing, I wanted to make sure I was doing the right thing, so I studied it out and I looked at a lot of different religions. So Lucy decides to do the same thing. She's, you know, studying Buddhism and others. They only mention Buddhism, but she's looking into other religions to kind of figure out if Christianity is right for her.
Why Buddhism?
I don't know. Richard Gere likes it.
Eric reacts to this in a way that is good parenting, where he was like, yeah, sure, I support you. You're welcome to do whatever research you need. Let me know what you need from me. Like, whoa! It's probably really hard for him to do that. Good job, Dad. And there's even a part where Annie says that he's a liberal, that he's being a liberal because he's allowing her to make a choice for herself. Interesting. Interesting.
I don't want her to choose my church just because it's my church.
If you mean that, it's very liberal of you.
But then in the end, he backtracks and they basically still force her to become a Christian, so whatever. Episode 18. Oh, we're almost there. Oh my God, we're almost there. We're almost done. In this episode, Lucy asks her older sister, Mary, to help Jimmy Moon, Lucy's boyfriend, with his science homework because he's struggling in science. So Lucy gets Mary to start tutoring Jimmy Moon, but then Lucy starts getting in her head and freaking out about it and thinking that they are flirting with each other when Mary's 14 and Jimmy Moon is 12. There's no evidence for this. Lucy's just making it up in her head because she's crazy. We've established this. And get this, they actually had them kiss for recording this because Lucy's like freaking out and like making stuff up in her head, and she imagines in her head that her sister kisses her boyfriend, and they recorded it. They filmed it. Je m'en fiche, je prends. Why did they do that? I don't like it. Episode 19. Julie is leaving the rehab center. She's done with her alcohol rehab, which apparently is less than a pot rehab because that doesn't feel like it's been that long. Because of this, there's a big family reunion and Eric's parents come into town. We get more grandma and grandpa content with my least favorite people in this show, and the fact that they are really abusive, bad parents is abundantly clear. So what happens in this episode is that Eric is out on some weird meeting with obscure business people. Then they talk about some other guy who's looking for his son, who's named George. Reverend puts all the pieces together and he's like, oh my gosh, that's the George that my parents adopted. Remember that? Remember how they adopted that kid, George the orphan? So George's dad apparently is not dead. He just was really busy and was working out of the country, but now he's back and he's like, I want to find my son. It starts this whole drama between grandma and grandpa who have adopted George, and George is really happy with them, to now dad who's like, well, I want my son. Oh my God, what's gonna happen? And this is when we start to see more of the true character of the Colonel and his wife. Oh my God. The Colonel tells this crazy story about how they were at Disneyland talking to Mickey Mouse, and Mickey Mouse called the Colonel a blowhard, and the Colonel then started beating up Mickey Mouse all the way to Toontown.
World War III out there with the Colonel and Mickey Mouse trading punches.
That Disney really knew how to train his people.
This is a real story. This really happened, I swear. Then the Colonel and Grandma are sitting there talking to Jimmy Moon and just laying into him, roasting him, making him feel like a little piece of garbage because that's what they do.
So you're the insect dating my granddaughter? Well, I can't say I'm impressed with her taste.
Hey, hay is for horses. Are you a farmer, Mr. Moon?
And then afterward, they talk about how they know they were being mean to him, and they're laughing about how they were being mean to him.
Oh boy, that was fun.
They laughed about making this kid feel scared and terrified. What assholes? What horror? Oh, it gets worse though. When Grandma finds out that George's dad is wanting to get George back, she gets so flustered and upset, she slaps her son because he said he's not capable of doing anything legally to keep him from going back with his dad. And she gets so mad at her son, she slaps him. What? So we're at a physical level of abuse now. Everyone just brushes it off because, oh, that's just grandpa and grandma. That's just how they are. Eventually, George does meet his dad and he's like, oh, my dad is a really nice guy, but I also don't want to not be with these guys and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. He doesn't want to cause drama, so he runs away. He hotwires a car and runs away. The poor kid, poor George. He decides that he would rather go back to the orphanage than have to pick between his dad and his adoptive parents. We're not done with being abusive shitheads, okay? Now we're going to take it out on Julie. Julie's being a little bit standoffish because she's not close with her parents because they're psycho, and she's very distant, especially from the Colonel, her father. Well, Grandma Ruth blows up at Julie, yells at her, and tells her that she is mistreating the Colonel.
Don't you ever talk about your father like that.
Grandma, calm the fuck down, Grandma. Well, I think everyone is super misguided and a little bit too attached to trying to fix their family, but aren't we all, right? So Annie goes up to Julie, her sister-in-law, and chats with her and is like, they need you. Your parents need you. And you need them. Yeah, this relationship should be ending in a no contact, not forgiveness, okay? I'm personally not big enough to forgive these people. I don't think that their daughter should, but miracles happen, I guess. So we'll see. Julie, fresh out of rehab, is really stressed about her parents being here, so she goes straight back to alcohol. Matt sees her, comes to the rescue, saves her from the alcohol, and then points out that the Colonel is outside by a canoe. There was an important thing about the canoe. I really don't remember why, but he's out by the canoe. And Matt tells Julie she either needs to pick, she has two options, right? Alcohol or talking to her father. Those are her options, because apparently her alcoholism is driven by her bad relationship with her father. So of course, going and talking to the person causing all your trauma is the way to get rid of your trauma. That's not how that works. The Colonel's sitting out there pouting like, ooh, boo-hoo, me, wah, wah, nobody likes me, my family doesn't like me. Hey bud, You dug your own grave there. But what was it? Oh, honor thy father and mother, I guess. Yeah, no, dad's in the right here, for sure. Julie comforts her father and hugs him and says, I love you. And luckily, that actually fixes everything in their relationship. So it's all better now. Here's the resolution to this episode. They find George and they decide what they're gonna do. Grandma and Grandpa are gonna clean out their spare guest house that they happen to have, and George and his dad are gonna move out east with them and live in the guest house so that George can have private time with his dad, but also can still be close to Colonel and Grandma. Julie decides to move out there as well because the only way to heal her alcohol addiction is to heal her problems with her parents. Moving in with your parents, yeah, great idea, Julie. I'm sure that'll help with your alcoholism. But then there's like a hint of some chemistry going on between Julie and Bill, who is George's dad. Him and Julie have little love eyes at each other, little chemistry going on there. And he invites Julie to drive across the country with him to take the canoe over to the East Coast. All right, Julie's doing a road trip with a stranger. Love that for her. Episode 20 is the one that I have so lovingly named the pedo episode. Yeah, and it's not the Reverend, surprisingly. Annie has this friend named Rachel who moved into town, an old friend from high school, and they're like, it's my friend! And Annie's all excited that she's been hanging out with this friend, feeling like she's in high school again, and just excited to have a social life. Except Rachel is a creep. She's a creep and she's messed up, and she has big issues, okay? So let's talk about it. As soon as we see her, she immediately hits on both Matt and Eric, like, dude. Later, Eric brings it up to Annie.
Rachel strikes me as boy crazy.
No, what do you mean? Yeah, no shit.
Sorry, I know I've got keys somewhere in here.
You don't find me attractive, do you?
Sure, but you're also my mom's friend.
Well, what would happen if I weren't your mom's friend? Would you ask me out?
Yeah, I guess. Why not?
Good answer. Tomorrow night, we have a date. I'm taking you to see a band.
So they kind of throw this out like Rachel invited Matt to go to a concert, and they're talking about it at dinner all together. And Mary's like, oh, I want to come. Can I come?
Well, can I come too?
Yeah, that's a great idea. You come too.
Fine, it'll be just the three of us.
Like, oh, thank God. Mary's gonna be there. Nothing bad's gonna happen if Mary's there. The reason they went to this concert is because Rachel knows the band. It's like at a little coffee shop. But apparently the lead singer of the band is sick. And so they come up to Rachel. They're like, hey, do you think you could sing? And she's like, oh, no. But apparently Mary can sing. So like, how about you have Mary be your lead singer? Mary gets up on the stage, slays, kills it. She's amazing. Let's go, Mary.
Take me to heart.
She's grooving, everything's vibing, and Rachel asks Matt to dance with her.
Oh, no, I really don't dance.
Good. I'll teach you.
It gets uncomfortable real quick. Obviously, Mary can tell what's going on. She saw the whole thing, and she starts grilling Matt about it afterward. Like, dude, what are you doing? And Dad overhears, so that's fun.
It wasn't a date.
Oh, yes, it was the date. I was there. I saw you.
Hi there.
Eric gets in on the mix and is like, whoa. What? Annie is completely in the dark about this. She doesn't know that her friend hit on her son. There's a part where she's sitting chatting with Rachel. She brings up something unrelated, and Rachel thinks that she's talking about Matt, and so she's like, oh yeah, Matt hit on me. This is the first Annie's hearing about it at all. So she's like, wait, what? My son did what to you? So now the narrative has been twisted, okay? Uh-oh. How could it possibly get any worse? No, it doesn't. That's about the worst it gets. The other main plot running through this episode is about Huey, Ruthie's imaginary friend. Remember I mentioned Huey earlier? So Huey got sat on by Simon. Huey is gone, and she's devastated.
Simon sat on Huey and squished him. He's gone forever.
We get a lot of Huey lore in this one. This is what we know about Huey, okay? He's short with straight hair, and he has a clump on the top of his head. He is married, but he doesn't see his wife much because she travels a lot in space. she's an astronaut. Ultimately, Huey is gone, and we are going to throw a party for him. At Huey's goodbye party, Eric gives a magical speech that inspires Rachel to be honest about hitting on Matt. So she talks to Annie about it, pulls her aside, and they actually have a very good conversation. Throughout this season, I've been continuously impressed with Annie as a mother. Like, her communication skills are really good. She's written really well as a mother in this show, and I like that.
What were you thinking? I wasn't thinking. Matt doesn't look 17. But he is 17, and you know it.
Annie is really mature and great with Rachel, and that's all resolved. No more pedos in here. Get them out of here. Bye, Rachel. Okay. We're here. How did we get here? I've been recording for so long. You don't understand. I have been recording for so long. The season finale is split into 2 parts. All right, we got 2 episodes left. This is episode 21. A lot going on in this story. First things first, Grandpa's in town, okay? Not Colonel, but Annie's dad, Grandpa. And he just unannounced brings a girlfriend with him. This woman is named Ginger. He's bringing her over on a plane to meet his family. However, he doesn't tell anyone that he's bringing her. She doesn't know that, and they don't know she's coming. It's a disaster waiting to happen, and it's been not that long since his wife died. So I'm sure you can tell where this is going. Not good. It's not going good.
Annie, this is my girlfriend, Ginger. Ginger, this is my little girl.
The family is obviously pretty pissed off that he brought this random woman over to like replace their grandma. Well, that's what they feel like. It turns out that Ginger and Grandpa like aren't actually sure about their relationship status. Like, it's kind of weird.
Going steady, right?
Yeah, I guess we are.
I hope so.
And I guess when he went to meet her family, they all hated him too. This bleeds into the second episode as well. Essentially, they're just like, you know what, this is probably just not going to work out. Our families both hate that we're dating, so let's just break up. And like halfway through the episode, she just flies home, which she probably shouldn't have been there in the first place, if we're being honest. A little too soon and too fast to introduce your new lover, Grandpa. They break up, but then Mrs. Bink, if you remember, Mrs. Bink lies again, makes up another story. She's like, oh yeah, the same thing happened to me. My daughter didn't want me to date the love of my life, and I regretted it forever. I was so sad that I let my kids determine my future and my happiness and whatever. So he calls up Ginger, and Ginger comes back. Flies back. Again, she flies back. And everyone's cool with it now. So thanks, Mrs. Bink, for being a plot device, lying and telling people stories. Now, Matt and Mary in this episode both meet new people. Mary meets a cute boy at a park named Wilson, playing with his little baby brother. He hits on her. He's super smooth, and she's like, okay. But they go on a date, and it's kind of a disaster because like some other kids were making fun of them, and it just like made Mary feel weird, and it just ended up being an odd situation. Matt randomly runs into this girl, Heather, and then somehow finds her house. I don't really know how that all happened. Like, he saw her at an airport and then somehow knew where she lived. He shows up at her house.
Is that girl you walked up here with your daughter?
Yes, she is.
Oh, great. See, I saw your daughter this morning at the airport, and I tried to talk to her, but she wouldn't give me the time of day.
Her mom's there, and he's like, yeah, you can come in and meet her. Turns out Heather is actually deaf, and Matt is like, oh my gosh, this is cool. You are super pretty, and I want to go out with you. And her mom interprets all of that. Heather ultimately is really hesitant about it. She's like, I don't know. I don't think I can date a hearing person. Like, there's just some cultural differences, some stuff you're not gonna get. But he's really determined to date this girl, so he asks her out. They go out to dinner, and at dinner, some kids are making fun of her for using sign language. She gets really hurt and asks Matt to take her home, and so he does. Matt's pretty bummed out she ended the date early. He doesn't really understand why. Well, he talks about this with his dad, and Eric has the bright idea to invite her to church because that will fix all the problems. Now it's church time. Heather does not show up at church, but Wilson does show up at church and comes clean to her about something. Apparently, the little kid that he was playing with is not his little brother, is actually his son. Yeah. Single dad time. And this is where, coming back to like when I was talking about the double standard thing, single mothers being seen as like, oh, this is horrible, your life is over, this is devastating, whereas this single father seems to be really well put together and just such a catch because, oh my gosh, he's a single dad. It grinds my gears. The end of episode 21, there's a huge cliffhanger where Annie is leaving the church. I forgot why. I don't remember if it was even important. Annie's leaving and Mary is running after her mom, and then she ends up getting hit by a car right outside of church. So, to be continued. Episode 22, we start with Mary in the hospital undergoing surgery, and everyone's pretty stressed out about that. She had a surgery on her knee. Matt takes out the younger kids to go get some food, and they happen to see Heather there where they're out eating. And there's a cute little scene with Heather and Matt kind of making up, and it's cute. Mary was in a car accident, but the guy drove away, so it's a hit and run. Nobody knows who actually hit Mary, except then he comes clean and confesses to Matt. This guy from the school is like, oh yeah, I hit Mary, I'm really sorry. So Matt punches him. Well, the boy who hit Mary goes to the hospital to apologize to Mary for hitting her with his car. And she's all like, it's fine, don't even worry about it. And then Mary's boyfriend is all like, why are you so nice to him? He just hit you with his car. He just did a hit and run on you. He hit and runned you. Her response is, I would feel worse if I wasn't nice to him. Huh? Excuse me? What in the people-pleasing hell? In addition, Mom, Annie, encourages Matt to apologize to the guy that he punched for hitting Mary with his car. I am stunned. No, that's a different topic for another day. So now, in the hospital, she's getting released from the hospital, and the doctor is telling her everything's fine, she's doing great, the surgery went great, she can go home. But then, after Mary is gone, the doctor tells the dad, which this infuriates me too, that he wouldn't tell Mary, but he would tell Eric. Why? Oh, dad is more important than the person who's struggling with the issue? Fine, don't tell her dad, because young women can't take hard news about themselves. You have to tell dad. Anyway, basically, Mary is under the impression that she's going to be in a wheelchair for a little bit and then on crutches for a while and then she'll be fine. But then, turns out, what the doctor told Eric and didn't tell Mary is that she will probably never be able to play basketball again because of her injury. And that's the end of the season. I think it's fair to guess that God is going to do his magical powers through magical pastor Reverend Man Eric, and Mary's knee is probably going to be fine, but we'll see. I guess we'll have to see if I even watch season 2, because I don't know if I can take much more of this show. But if you really want me to, maybe I'd do it. That was Seventh Heaven season 1. The whole thing, every episode. Dude. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching this probably very long video. If you did like it, you should probably like the video, because that means you liked it, right? That's what that means. Also, you should absolutely subscribe if you haven't already, if you aren't already, because there's a scientifically proven phenomenon that happens when you subscribe to my channel. It makes you really sexy and hot, and it's super weird. I don't know how it happened, but like everyone who subscribes to my channel is just ridiculously hot. I guess that's my magic. Reverend magic. Maybe I should be a reverend too. Okay, bye.